A new documentary called 150 is releasing in cinemas from July 8th, and it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the director of the film, Ryan Kennedy, but the star, the the lead actress, if you like to put it that way, the Erchana Murray-Bartlett, who ran 150 consecutive marathons over 150 days. What an incredible feat. Welcome both to Movie Metropolis.
Hello, thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
mate. Appreciate your time.
Now, first of all, Akana, what is it that influenced you to make this record-breaking attempt to run 150 consecutive marathons?
It's something that I've always dreamed of doing as a little girl. I grew up in country Victoria and I always used to set myself these running challenges. I've been a runner my whole life, and I used to there was a bridge which in my childhood memory was ages and ages away. As an adult, I think it was under a kilometer, but I used to time myself to get down to this bridge and back to the house, and then would try and beat it the next day. And it was something that I just always dreamed of doing, is running the entire length of the country. But then, you grow up and your career and university gets in the way. And I was chasing a professional running career right up until 2020, when the world kind of grinded to a halt with COVID. And it sort of reimagined the sense of adventure where you could be out the outdoors on your own, but you couldn't do it. Races were cancelled globally. And it kind of coincided with meeting Rye at the same time. And I voiced this dream of mine. And he said, great, let's quit everything, sell all our gear and end our lease and go. So it was a combination of something I've always wanted to do and meeting the right person to help facilitate it as well. And just having a little bit of courage to take that first step.
Okay, well, what an incredible first step that was. The journey that you took was quite amazing. So, Ryan, tell me the challenges that you had in directing the film.
You know what? At the very beginning, I really didn't know what I was filming. I just knew that I was going to be in the middle of the outback, getting tugged along by a trailer for 6 months. And I guess I just knew there was going to be an amazing story in this adventure, but I genuinely didn't know what it was. And I had a background of, sharing stories as a storyteller, and I always put a lot of production and a lot of effort into making sure that you get that right. And this one was completely different because it was completely wild, and we were building the planes, we were flying it, and we really didn't know what was going to happen. So it was one of those things where it was like a little bit more like, oh, is this going to stick? But at the other side, it was like, well, there's actually no pressure at all because nothing's in our control. It was like a couple of times there where I looked at it and I was like, whew, every day for the last week has been exactly the same. How am I going to share this story and make it exciting? And we used to joke about, oh, if we get to the end of this and really nothing crazy has happened, maybe we just adopt a dog and pretend like we found this dog on the adventure and it ran with us, add a bit of flavor to it. But we never had to do that because by the end of it, we were just so involved in this run and everything that was coming with it. And we just trusted that there was enough story in that from a girl running the length of the country to trying to raise money for charity and break a Guinness World Record. And when I took a step back and looked at that, I was like, nah, this is an incredible feat by itself.
Okay, it certainly is. So, Akana, tell me about filming yourself, about the both the physical and mental health issues that you faced that we see in the documentary, because it is quite an incredible process.
Yeah, and I guess on what Rye just talked about, not knowing what would happen, enough did go wrong for it to be a constant story in itself. And I mean, the film, every part was a challenge. I mean, I'd never really been one for sharing much through film until I met Rye. So even just getting used to speaking to the camera and sharing my story was a bit of a hurdle in the early days that, I got quite comfortable with towards the end, but things went wrong from the start. So on day 17, I tore my calf. I was running on the corrugated roads of Cape York, and from there, we were so far from a physio that we just had to push through those next 5 or 6 marathons until we were close enough to a town for treatment. I guess the mental and physical hurdle of that so early in the piece was quite challenging because we'd done a lot of promo to, I guess, share to the world that we were starting this. I'd quit my job, we'd sold everything, we were raising all this money for then 17 days into a 150-day expedition for something to potentially derail the train was quite scary because you'd put so much emphasis on this trip. That's my little one that's cooing quite loudly there. um, it was quite, yeah, it was quite a scary moment. And getting through that hurdle was almost a pivotal point for me because then I thought, all right, well, if I can get through that, it's going to take something much bigger to stop me. And then from there and on, I think my resilience and my mental strength got, and obviously my physical strength got more and more, I guess, it improved as we went. So not to say we didn't have a lot more challenges between the car breaking down. I think the car was a bit clunkier than I was for most of the expedition, and everything else that went wrong. It was, yeah, quite an adventure.
Wow, what an incredible journey. And it's so interesting that it's called Tip to Toe. How was that decision made? Of course, it's all set in Australia.
Yeah, that was your decision, wasn't it?
I think it was like a almost like a placeholder title for such a long time because we were like, oh, it's tip to toe. And then, when you just like when you're choosing a kid's name, you just give it a name and you're like, oh, it'll outgrow that. We'll think of something better. And I don't think we did.
It was always the right fit for we were, and it's actually a funny story because we called it tip to toe. I was running the length of the east coast of Australia, and a lot of people would say to me, "Oh, but you're not really because you're not doing Tasmania," because the goal was to always finish in Melbourne, and got to Melbourne and celebrated the win. And so many people had said, "Oh, but you haven't really run mainland Australia." That 2 months later we went and ran from Devonport to Hobart just so we could officially say it was tip to toe.
How, how interesting to hear that. And tell me about the involvement of Osher Guensburg, who is there to narrate and so on, which also drives the story to some extent.
Yeah, Osher's a legend. I don't know, I'm from the generation where I grew up with Osher on my TV screens when I got home from school and things. So he was always that face and that voice that was always around, I guess from a very early age when I was like developing my own creativity and like, yeah, I guess he was a voice not just for this film, but for like a big part of my life. And I think one like long, hot, sweaty day while Erchana was running, I think I was just on the bike beside her and just started visualizing if for some reason this ended up being a story, like how we could tell it in a creative way. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we got someone credible that had a power of their own, but also their voice could really tell a story in its own right. And when we got back, I never let go of that, and I did it all the right way. I didn't just go and just like slide into Osher's DMs. I went through his management and presented what we were doing, and they loved it. And Osher came back and said, "Hey, you wanted to be involved," which was so beautiful of him. And so yeah, went down to Osher's house, spent some time. Yeah, obviously it's one of these things that by the end of Akana's journey, there was so much media behind it that everyone kind of knew the story, and Osher was on board and played like a large role and in I guess a co-starring in this story, and very grateful to have him on board.
Yes, exactly. So tell me how the two of you worked together in fashioning the edit of the film, putting everything you shot at Kana and Ryan what you shot, etc., and the narration, etc. How did that process work? Because that sounds like it was a fairly complex process.
It's actually interesting because I would say that 90% of the edit was up to Ryan and his team. I actually didn't play a big role in the post-production. I was obviously there during it, but again, it was all because it's a documentary. We were sort of just naturally running the expedition, and Ryan would capture what he saw. And I remember watching the film for the first time, 60% edited, and thinking, wow, this is such an interesting perspective shift because I've got my own personal experience of running it in real life and what I saw and what I perceived and what my expectations were. And then to see what Rye saw, or I guess someone in the outside world saw the expedition as was quite interesting because he saw humor that I didn't see. He captured hard bits that I thought weren't, as maybe weren't as difficult or more difficult than what he's perceived them as. So it was interesting to see, yeah, how he'd captured what I'd lived. I guess I'll let Rye speak to the post-production, but in terms of the narration, I guess it was a bit of what happened and a bit of Rye's creative writing and a bit of Osher's impro, wasn't it?
Yeah, honestly, Peter, the hardest part was coming back with 6 months worth of footage and try and cut that into a feature film. And there's like, I guess, like 20 feature films we could have made out of this. But yeah, I think the bones of this story like speak for themselves, and to string it all together, I feel like any filmmaker has to, follow a particular pattern to try and keep an audience interested. And I just needed to lean on those arcs as much as possible. And, we couldn't just have a film all about disaster or all about comedy. We just really needed to splice it both together. So that was a big challenge for me, and a big learning curve. And it took a lot longer than I thought it would. But grateful to be on the other side of it and be talking to people like you now. It's done.
I understand. So well done on that. And I also commend you on adding some animations to 150. It sort of adds another element, I think, to the film.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah, I think just like in terms of like storytelling, we really wanted to make sure that the audience knew or tried to like really bring them into the world of how hard one marathon is, and let alone 150. And even for myself, we even talk about it like jokingly at the moment, or, it obviously comes up quite a lot socially. And people like still don't entirely know how hard it is to even do one. And it's on a lot of people's bucket list just to run one marathon. So any sort of ways of creatively bringing a viewer in to try and make them understand how grueling one marathon is by itself was everything we leaned on, really.
Okay, really interesting to hear that. So, Akana, with the 150 days, my goodness sake, I was exhausted by the by the end of the documentary. But you also met some really interesting people along the way who helped you and so on. That in itself was good to see.
That was the best. Well, there was, three incredible aspects, and one of them being the places that you got to run through, one being, raising money for a great cause, and one being the people that I met. And actually, the places and the people almost interrelated because we didn't have so much of a logistics plan. The general direction was south. So what I did, which I think was one of the highlights of the run, was every morning I would say on social media, I'm heading towards Cooktown, I'm heading towards Mackay, Gold Coast, Blue Mountains. And the community of that area would reach out and say, hey, we've got this incredible trail. We will take you there. And they would meet me at, 5 or 6 a.m. And those groups got larger and larger and larger as we headed down the east coast of Australia to the point where in Albury Wodonga, I remember clearly it was Christmas, New Year's Eve, and a massive group turned out to show me the highlight trails of Albury Wodonga. And they ran the full marathon with me to the point where 3 years on, they now do an annual marathon with that same course on New Year's Eve. And little things like that that have just established off the back of this run was heartwarming. And to see the groups grow so significantly as we went south was fantastic. And what a great way to see Australia, because the people that live in those areas, they know their local trails. So of course they're going to show me the best path forward. And because we were raising money for biodiversity, it was really important to us to stay off the Bruce Highway and off the roads and get into the bush and really showcase the best of Australia. And I think Rye's done that really well in the film, as he's captured the essence of the why behind the run. And that was something that was really important to me.
Exactly, that combination of your running and of the outback and of various locations
Mm.
in Australia on the East Coast, etc. Really interesting to see all that. So Ryan, I was wondering if in the way that you fashioned the final cut of the film 150, whether you were influenced at all in your own background in filmmaking or other filmmakers or whatever. Were there any sort of influences at all?
I think like I got to the stage towards obviously there's like editing this ginormous maze of an adventure, and constantly it was like a maze where I'd go down and spend a day editing these a couple of scenes to get to the end of it to realize it didn't quite work or it didn't quite fit, and I had to back my way out of it. And I found myself doing that quite a lot. And I thought I really just, as much as it was just Akana and I on this adventure, I really wanted to bring in someone that also could see this and be like, hang on, and just give it like another coat of paint from another lens. And so I brought on my friend Andrew, who's an absolute like gun in the documentary space, who gave me a lot of guidance. So if for some reason there was anyone or anything, it was my friend Andrew who edited this film with me and definitely like steered it north. So now he has become one of my inspirations and someone that I look up to as a collaborator and a best buddy. So I guess, yeah, sometimes it's only a couple of people in the trenches and you just got to work together in that respect. And so I was just very grateful to have that support.
Okay, really interesting to hear that, and steered it north. It's almost like going from tip to toe to tip. So, okay, very good. And I must commend you too on the use of music in the film.
Yeah, I guess I have a music background. I was a recording artist in an earlier life, and music has always has played a large part for me. And I guess when it comes to film, trying to make someone feel something, music is it. Music is everything. It make you feel colors you can't see, or like emotions that, like as a filmmaker, we're trying to push onto our audience to make them feel like they're there in the scene with Erchana. And that was a job. Yeah, we definitely just. I reckon every scene we tried it so many times on like different types of shoe. Like that doesn't fit, that shoe doesn't fit until we found something that felt like really sweet. So yeah, I mean, especially like for someone like myself, I had a background of making short form video. So this is really one of my first attempts at making a long form documentary. And just like knowing now how much work, and it's not just one song, it's 50 songs that you need to choose, and you need to choose them so sweetly to make sure that you execute that properly.
But I
Yeah, it
think
was
you
more work than
enjoyed
I
that.
thought.
I think you enjoyed that part of it. You know, music is definitely Rye's passion. So I saw him get a lot of, yeah, a lot of joy trying to find the right song for the right, emotion of the scene.
Yeah, there is a world within a world, Peter.
Okay, well done on all of that. So, Akana, I'm now quite intrigued. Are you planning more marathons, especially with your baby,
No,
or
we are
more running?
this little guy is Jez is 8 months, sorry, 8 weeks, not months, whew, old now, so that's why he's attached to us. We did a few adventures after, particularly to raise money. The two that come to mind is I live on the Gold Coast and there's this big, well, I wouldn't call it big, but there's a hill up here and we ran up it once for every critically endangered Aussie animal. So we had 124 hill repeats, which was a lot of fun. And yeah, I've gone and ran some pretty big races in the US, and ideally, I would love to get back to it. Although I'm in full mum mode at the moment, running very small distances in my postpartum journey. But yeah, hopefully we can continue to inspire people to use whatever their passion is. Mine's running and Rise storytelling to do things for a cause that matters to them. So I very much advocate for whatever your passion is, going out there and doing something, living these wild ideas and just believing in yourself. And I'll continue to share that message, even with a little one.
Fair enough. That's a great philosophy. So interesting to hear all that. And Ryan, are you planning other films now?
Ooh, like I mean, this guy is taking up a little bit more time than we ever thought. I think you know what? At the end of every week, I'll be lying if I didn't empty my pockets just to kind of like shake off all the ideas that I collected throughout the week. And every so often, there's a $2 coin in there. But I'll be honest, Peter, there's a lot of bottle caps and guitar picks as well of stuff that just are filling up space that maybe the world doesn't need to see. So. But no, privileged to be on the other side of this and have this film doing the rounds at the moment. And I really just want to concentrate on like celebrating, I guess maybe putting a ribbon around this story and sharing it all properly. And if for some reason I get the courage to piece something like this together again, or if she does something just as ridiculous, we'll share that. But still very much just yeah in the 150 bubble at the moment.
Fair enough. Well, speaking of that, 150 is releasing July 8th, courtesy of Heritage Films. Getting a distributor, getting a film out there is so important, I think.
Definitely. Yeah. And it's a wild, confusing world for young filmmakers to try and get their art on screens or any sort of like platforms or mediums just to share it to an audience. And like it's amazing what you're doing, Peter, here. And there needs to be more of it because there's so many amazing projects out there that get to a particular stage and then where they end because they need to be able to have like distributors out there to be able to find their work and to say, oh, we know a market, whether it's here or there, to try and get it out. We definitely struggle with that bit as well, trying to like make sure we made that right move. But yeah, getting a distributor out there that wants to carry a load of the weight and come on after a particular stage where they can go, right, we can help you take it from here. We're very grateful to have Heritage in our pocket. And yeah, it's now up to filling the rooms and sharing the story and doing it collaboratively as a team.
Okay. And if you've had a few screenings so far, what sort of responses have you both had to the film?
Oh, it's been great. We premiered it at the Brisbane International Film Festival, and I think we sold the room out in 24 hours. But I will say that there was a lot of friends and family that were very excited to see it, so we won't take full credit. And because it's a running based and environmental based film, we've done some screenings through those channels, so at running festivals and at environmental, I guess events. So it's had a great reception. So we're excited to see it tour down the East Coast and yeah, take the little guy and go and do a little Q&A at the end of the screenings as we go through the main communities or the main cities on the East Coast. So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Oh, look, congratulations on the film. Good luck with all of that. And it's been my pleasure to be speaking to Erchana Murray-Bartlett, who is the marathon star of 150 and the director of the film, Ryan Kennedy. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Go,
Thanks for
Nikita.
having us.
Have a great day.
All the best. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Thanks, mate.